G'day YouTube, my name's Lance. Welcome to Bundy Bear's Shed. Well, the weather report, 18 to 30, lovely sunny day today. It's humid because we've had quite a bit of rain recently, and we got back from holidays last Wednesday evening, and it's Monday now. And so Thursday I mowed some grass around the shed because it was over a foot high and up the front there, and it's grown over 100 millimetres in that time. But 18 to 30, sunny day, but the humidity's certainly there, and I've got a lot of outside work to do. The whole paddock, we've got grass a metre high in the paddock, and while we're away, which was from the 6th of March to last Wednesday, whatever date that was, April before, 4th or something like that maybe, 3rd or 4th, we had over 13 inches of rain while we were away. So the whole place, around the shed here up the top, at the front's good, but the whole place, look, you could bog a duck. Yeah, the paddock's very saturated, and the dam's overflowing and all the tanks are overflowing, and out the back, the tank out the back of the big shed here, it's overflowing and the water's running around through the waiting room outside there. So I've got to be very careful where I go. But look, we had a great trip away. We went from here out to a place called Mitchell. And look, for those overseas, get your map out, get your Google Maps out, and you can follow along probably. But when you go to a little town called Mitchell, there's a caravan park right on the river. And then on the other side of the river, there's a walking track to get over there. There's a hot spring, and it's a artesian spring. It comes out of the artesian basin, which is under a lot of Queensland out west. And it's just mineral springs. And so Jude and I spent 2 days there, and Mitchell's, out of all the ones we've been to over the years, Mitchell's about the best set up one, because you pay $10 to go in for the day, but you can go from the hot pool to the cool pool. They've got good amenities, showers and everything there. And then up on the veranda, they've got like a coffee shop and a little cafeteria where you can have a pie or toasted sandwiches or something like that. So look, that was great. We had a good time there. Ended up going from there out through Charleville. We pulled up at Charleville for brekkie, the next morning, and stopped at the Rabbit Trap Hotel for a quick beer, and I bought a fishing shirt there. Had a good chat to them, but they're under flood now. Then we went to Quilpie. Had a look around Quilpie. Quilpie's very set up for tourists. Dropped down to, I think it was Two Pine Pub. Popped in there for a yarn and a beer. I think Two Pine, I might have that name wrong, and then down to Thargomindah, and we stayed a few nights at Thargomindah, and it was bloody hot. We took the camper trailer and we got a powered site, because out there, we're nearly 40-degree temperatures, high 30s, and the fridge in the camper, it's got it's an absorption type fridge, but it's got a little fan, and before we left, probably 6 months ago, that little fan, it's a 125mm or a 5-inch computer fan, blows across the evaporator core. And so, yeah, that fan buggered up, so I put a new one in before we left. Well, while we were out at Thargomindah, even though we had the fridge shaded and we had it under the tent part in its slide-out drawer with the door open and vents and all that, that little fan never stopped. And the fridge was struggling to keep up. But we had a powered site, but we didn't have a little fan in the camper, and I spent 2 nights sleeping out of my kickback chair. The chair, I just kick back in it, and you have a good snooze in it, but there was just absolutely no breeze, nothing inside the camper, and the little breeze that was outside wasn't making it through the mosquito mesh, the fly wire sort of thing. So, so I was happy to kick out under a tree, just outside the camp. I was right, I was 10 foot from the door sort of thing, and I could kick back on my chair and have a snooze. And I had a good snooze out there. But in the camper, I just sweated and sweated. I thought, no, not putting up with this shit. But anyway, we left there and we were heading back in. I think we went from there to Narrabri, and we popped across to Narrabri because once we left there, along the road we had a look and the bloody fridge went out on error. Oh, I went to Walgett, sorry. And there's a really nice free camp outside of Walgett, south of Walgett, and you can stay there, I think for 24 hours, something, 48 hours maybe, but there's showers and toilets there and all that, and it's a free camp. So we pulled in there and we parked next to a bloke from down south, and another fella was from North Queensland. He watches us, and I helped him with an injection pump apparently. And so yeah, we bumped into people that recognised us, and that was nice. But the bloody fridge wouldn't work properly, and I didn't know what was going on. I couldn't get power. I had plenty of power in the caravan, like the battery in the caravan, and there's two 138 amp hour batteries in the camper, and they were up around 12.5 volts, but the fridge just wasn't keeping up, and I reckoned I had a power problem from the batteries through, so I pulled the board out to have a look, and I reckon it looked all right. Put it back, it was fine. But if I actually run power out of the back of the ute through a 50 amp Anderson plug straight to the fridge, well, it seemed to run all night like that. So I thought, okay, I've got a wiring problem in the camper. So I went from there to Narrabri, and we'd booked in at a caravan park there, right in town. And so we went and saw them about 10, 11 in the morning and said, look, I know we're not supposed to come in till 2 o'clock sort of thing, but is there any chance we can pop in early so I can hook up to the power and I can diagnose the fridge, because it was a Friday, and if I needed parts or that, the shops were open. And this old Sheila says, no. She says, we have rules for a reason, sort of thing. And I was, oh. And she said, if we let everyone in early, the gardeners would have no time to do the sites. And Jude says, well, we just wanted to pop the side out of it and just have a look at it while it was there. And they don't like you working on gear in their sites. And she said no. So anyway, we're allowed in. She let us in a little bit early in the end, a bit after lunchtime. But so in the meantime, I went down to Repco and I bought a digital multimeter and a test light, and a new digital multimeter, which just because I didn't take one. And well, I pulled everything out there on the side of the road waiting to get let into the caravan park, and I followed wires back through and back in and all around and pulled all the connections apart and put them together, and bloody thing worked like a beauty. I've got no idea what went on. And so while we stayed there, we kept on 240 volt power, and 240 volt power picks the voltage up to about 13.5, 14 volts, and yet when you just run on the batteries, because they're AGM batteries, well, the voltage goes from 13 to 12.7, 12.6, 12.5, and must be, it gets voltage dropped from there to the fridge, I believe. So, but anyway, since I've come home, I've popped into into King Super Centre, and they have a 6 metre wiring kit with the big 6A wire. So that's about 8 millimetres, something like that. It's thick wire. I'm going to run a hot wire with a fuse in it directly from the battery without going through all the other gobbledygook, straight, straight to the fridge. So we're going to, because when I put a solid power supply from the ute to the fridge, it worked fine. But when I went through the other stuff, it played up. And the another time we turned the fridge from 240 to 12, and then I'd bug it around, I'd turn something off. No, actually I'd unplugged it. We weren't, we'd used up enough, because the fridge was a bit sus, we'd used up enough out of it that everything would fit into the fridge in the ute, which is an angle. And so we didn't worry about the fridge. But coming home, we had a bit of stuff, and I said to Jude, well, we'll just put the camper fridge on. And then it went out on error. The fan wouldn't start again. So, but anyway, I got it going. All of a sudden it clicked in and off it went, and it's been going ever since, to my knowledge. But I've turned it off since we come home. So we've got the camper opened up at the moment. It didn't get damp. It sealed well. And yeah, so I'm going to run a wire in the camper. Pardon me, just to look after that. not this coming weekend, the weekend after, we're at the Mount Perry show, and the weekend after that we're at the Monto show. And so we'll be taking the engine and a little baler and the camper, so we need it working. So that'll be this week's episode, apart from mowing and slash, and there is just a bucket of it. So anyway, we went to Narrabri for a couple of nights, and that was worth a look. We did the Terry tourist thing and drove around, and we headed sort of south from there, and we went through Boggabri, and we noticed there's a sign on a shed, Jeff's tractor shed. So we ended up down at Gunnedah for a couple of nights, and the Gunnedah Rural History Museum, they were telling me it's got 6,000 square metres of sheds there. That's a bloody lot, and it was a big museum. But talking to the people in the office and the volunteers and that, they have the same problem. Like it's a really worth a look, but everything was dusty, dirty, needed a wipe over sort of thing. But they're all getting older, and there's that much stuff there. You'd need a team of people to keep it looking nice. But really worth a look. They had some stuff worth looking at. Then we went up to Jeff's shed at Boggabri, and had a look through there for $10. He follows along and bought stuff off Queensland Tractor Spares too, but he's got a shed, I think it's got 40 tractors in it, and really nicely kept. The floor's kept nicely, the tractors are wiped over, the place is a credit to him, and the volunteers that help him with it. But in the Gunnedah, we got the pushies off, the push bikes, and we're, pardon me, at Thargomindah, when we were out there, they had a really good push bike track around town, and Jude and I would get out and ride our push bikes and go and look at stuff. And the first hydroelectric plant in Australia, and this old hospital, and you could stay for hours in this hospital, but it was that bloody hot. They had a couple of fans, but we both come out of there wringing wet after being in there for 2 hours. And you sit down and they watch movies, and it was great. But we hopped on the push bikes and we're in Gunnedah, and there's a track around, and Mary McKillop that wrote the poem, I Love a Sunburnt Country. Everything's McKillop this and McKillop that out there. That's their claim to fame. And so the silos out there have a beautiful picture on them. And so we hopped off the path to, if you just stay on the push bike track, you're looking at it this way, but we hopped off the path with the bikes to get a square photo. Big mistake. They have a thing out there, they call them cat's head burrs, and they're a little 3-pronged burr with about a 3/8, 10mm spike on them. I got a few of them in the tyres on my bike. So, pardon me. And Judy didn't, but she probably didn't ride in, just sort of, but anyway. There's a bridge where you go up, and I was having a look, and Jude says, I've got a couple of prickles in my tyre. So she pulled them out, and hers weren't leaking. I pulled mine out. Well, that's where the rot set in. And we started getting... mine had about 6 or 8 places where the tyres were going down. So I said to Jude, I'm just going to Google Gunnedah push bike shop, bicycle shop. And I said, I'm going to leave you and go. And you can either go finish the lap on her own or come down with me. So she decided to follow along, but I was going. I said, just take your time, but I'm heading to that shop if I can get there. So anyway, we got into town there, and we weren't allowed to ride on the footpaths, and so I waited, and Jude caught me up, and went past, and we went going past a Macca's, and Jude says, I think it's time we had a break and had a cuppa and something for brekkie. So off into Macca's, and went to the Gunnedah push bike shop. And the old bike is the old bike I've had out in front of my shed here, and I've used to ride up to the house and back to go to the toilet. And I must have had it about 30 years. It's an old Repco one, and it was at the stage where one brake worked, the gears were sort of seized up a bit. The levers wouldn't change gears. I had to grab the cable and pull the cable, and the tyres were they were perished, and but it was all right for here. And I did look for a new bike before we went away, and I couldn't find anything I liked really. And so anyway, I goes into the Gunnedah bike shop and tells old mate about my predicament, and he says, oh, well, I suppose we could get you some tyres and tubes and all that. And I said, look, I've been thinking about buying a new bike. And there was a nice orange Giant Talon 4 or something there, they call it. And I said, how much is that? And he said, oh, they're our Talon range. He said, they're about $850. And they had all the different frame sizes. And he said, here's an XL frame because I've got long legs. And I find a lot of push bikes, I'm crumpled up a bit and you can pedal better if you stretch out. So he had an XL there and had a skinny seat on it. Yeah, it's like a G-string seat, I reckon. So I said, all right, sell me that. And I said, you're going to trade my old bike in? He said, I don't want that. And I said, well, I don't want it either, so give it to someone. And I said, you know, just take it for free and give it to someone in need or whatever you choose to do. And he said, oh, don't you want it? And I said, no, mate, I'm travelling. I've got 2 push bike racks on the camper and 2 push bikes. So I bought myself a nice new bike, and it's a cracker. Bright metallic orange, and it's got 29-inch rims on it, which is, yeah, in the old days, 28 was about the biggest, but it's a mountain bike with the shockies on the front. And but I found riding it around, to have the seat in a good position where I could touch the ground and get my pedals out, I was sort of leaning over on my arms quite a bit, which I didn't like. So I went back and saw him and said, can I buy a riser to pick the handlebars up? And they didn't have one, but so we didn't worry. But and these cat's head burrs out there, everyone knows about them. It's just us silly buggers from over the coast here that didn't. And yeah, they put that green stuff in all the bike tyres out there. So yeah, it's a self-sealing thing. So if you get a prickle, it sort of self-seals. But there's also a thing out there inside your bike tyre, and it's like a pool noodle, and it's a U-shaped piece about 5/8, 16 mil thick, and it goes into your push bike tyre first, and then your heavy duty tube goes in with the green stuff in it, and then that way these cat's head prickles, burrs, don't actually penetrate the tube. So well, we didn't get that put in, but we got the green stuff. We got the heavy duty tube and the green stuff in, and I bought some green stuff and did Jude's bike and all that. So, you know what I mean? So yeah, we had I ended up with a new bike, which is fine. We were on the market for one, but it just wasn't worth putting the money into the old one, sort of thing, really. So then we went to Tamworth, camped at Tamworth. Oh, and at Gunnedah, one night, the bloody wind, and you know, clear skies, but you're on the end of the Liverpool plains, and holy, wasn't it windy? And on top of the camper, there's a silver tarp, and they call it a tropical tarp. And what it does, it's like reflective, and when the sun hits your camper, it gives an air gap, probably about 6 inches in the middle there, and it tapers down at the end. But it gives you an air gap so the sun's not beating on your tent. And in wet weather, it also lets the water run off, you know, on that instead of the canvas. So they call it a tropical cover, and it was flapping like buggery. So, and I'd actually tensioned it just a little bit just to try and stop that. And anyway, we packed up and went to Tamworth. Got a nice place in Tamworth, right at the end of Peel Street. There's a caravan park, which is a main street, and that gave us access to the town and all that. So, I mean, so we had an ensuite site there. We like ensuite sites, and like for an extra $5 or $10 a night, you can actually have a toilet and shower, your own private toilet and shower, you know, at the side of your campsite. So we got a site like that. Well, the first night, that bloody wind was there again, and holy shit, I was up at 11 o'clock, about 11:15, up past 11, and that tropical cover had ripped clean across, and it was just flapping back and forth. So I was up in the middle of the night pulling that tropical cover off, folding it up so it didn't damage anything else. So I do have to sort that cover out somehow. The camper's fine without it, like, and some people on the forum, on the Austrac Campers forum, they reckon it flaps a bit, and the flapping gives them the shits and keeps them awake of a night, so they take them off. But I'm going to put one back on if I can get one. I've emailed Austrac Campers, but they've no reply, and that was 3 or 4 days ago. So we'll see how we go. And yeah, from there we went up to the Brendamere Grey Fergie muster. And we met up with, we had 11 Rum City Vintage Machinery Club members there from Bundaberg that drove down, and it's like 900 k's or something like that down. It's a fair hike. And had a great weekend. Dean and Nikita that bought the business office, they were there, and we introduced them around to people so people knew who they were dealing with. And yeah, had a good time, went out to dinner with them, and yeah, had a nice time. June and I stayed at the pub. And we got going from there, and we went, we had the camper outside the cop shop. There was no policeman there. And I was talking to the organisers, Anne and Winston, and I said, where can I put my camper trailer? And they said, oh, what about over next to the police station? And I said, oh, will he mind? And they said, there's no policeman in town. You want to be the policeman for the weekend? I was, oh, bloody oath, I'll do that. So, so I was a cop, the most relaxed cop you ever saw, but anyway. So yeah, I parked it right next to the police station on the main street there and chained it up, so yeah, it was safe, and put a solar panel on the front to keep the battery going and the fridges going and all that, so that worked out. Then we went up through Uralla, Armidale, stopped in at Armidale for a feed, and like a late breakfast I suppose it was, and from Uralla you can go west. Oh, well, we always take the long road if we can, and we went through Walker, through the back road to Uralla, and then there was another back road that went out past this church and this big shearing shed. And, yeah, we found like a memorial out the back roads there from World War II and things like that. And anyway, I got into Armidale, had something to eat, and looked around Armidale, but we were more interested in hopping on the waterfall way and looking at the waterfalls. So we headed out of Armidale, and we were pulling into every waterfall and having a nice time. And about a bit after 12, we're about 1,000 metres up at this stage. Yeah, at least 1,000 metres up where we were in the ranges there. And I said to G, this bloody ute seems to be getting gutless. And as you all know, I had it tuned before we went away, and I was happy with how it was going. You know, I thought, oh, well, this is okay, you know, got a bit of extra power, it's hanging on better than it used to. And they picked up the horsepower, you know, from 150 to 200, and I thought, well, that'll do. You know, there's blokes out there with 300 and 400 horsepower out of these engines, no worries. So I was happy with that. But it just started getting gutless, and I'm looking out the back in the mirror, and I can see the exhaust pipe black. You know, it's putting out black smoke, and I was thinking, oh shit, I don't know about this. So, and I'm going down gears, and it's just losing all power. So I pulled up on the side of the road, and it seemed to be revving okay and running all right, and had a look, and a bit of soot on the pipe, and I didn't worry too much about that. With a diesel particulate filter, normally it burns out and it keeps your pipe clean, and you can put your finger in there and you barely get anything on it. And I noticed that it was a bit black, and I thought, oh, you know, perhaps with the tune it's putting a bit extra out, I don't know. And anyway, so we took off again, and well, the black smoke started pouring out and grey smoke from under the vehicle, so we pulled up, and you would have thought the bloody thing was on fire, the amount of smoke coming out from underneath it. And we thought, holy shit, what do we do here? So I left it running just for a little bit at idle, because sometimes, you know, you let things idle and it cools, you know, the flow actually cools it down. And the engine never got hot, it always had oil pressure. And anyway, we had a chance to back, and we were right in these bloody cuttings, you know, and it was a dangerous prick of a spot. And but there was a road probably only 100 yards back on the right, so I said to Jude, I'm going to stay right on the edge, try and avoid the guidepost, and get back and pull in there. So we pulled in there, and I had a look under the vehicle when it was safe, and you could see where the DPF, which is diesel particulate filter, you could see black soot up the side of the gearbox and black soot on the chassis, and it looked like it had buggered up. So we thought, oh, well, we can't go any further. So we had the Starlink satellite, but because where we were parked was in the forestry, we couldn't get clear run, so that when we needed the Starlink, it didn't quite work. But we had one bar of phone signal, and I was trying to talk to NRMA, which is RACQ, the Royal Automobile Club of Queensland, which I've been a member for like 40 years now or something, so I'm a gold member, and we have the top care, the ultimate care, and I'm holding the phone up trying to get signal, and I thought, oh, I got the old Cell-Fi Go in the car still, so I put the aerial up, put that on, Well, that gave us full signal. We could sit in the cabin and have a proper discussion. And so yeah, they wanted someone to come out from Armidale to inspect the car, and we were like 120 clicks from Armidale. And so the fella rang and he said, you know, I got to come out and have a look. What are your symptoms? And I said, look, I'm a diesel fitter. I sort of know what I'm looking at, but we've shit a DPF. I said, it's soot all around there, up the gearbox and everywhere. I think we're going to need a tilt tray. So we got a tilt tray back to Armidale. We arranged for the tilt tray at 1 o'clock, and we sat on the side of the road, and we got back into Armidale at 9 o'clock that night. And through RACQ, with the ultimate cover, it arranges for you to get towed 100 kilometres to the nearest town, or yeah, well, with the ultimate, you get the nearest town. And anyway, so the tilt tray come and he got us back into Armidale about 9, and I'd already rang RACQ and they said, would you need us to sort some accommodation for you? And it started raining, and so I said, well, yeah, that'd be good, thanks. And then they sent me a thing saying, oh, we've got you a powered site for your camper. And so I rang them back and I said, look, it's bloody raining. We're going to come in after dark, and we don't really want to be standing in the rain putting up a camper trailer at 9 o'clock at night once we've been on the road all day. And so they said, oh, all right then. So they upgraded us to a cabin, and $160 a night, which that was fine. And they said, would you like a hire car to go around and, you know, sort stuff out? And I said, yeah, that'd be good. So they supplied one of them too. So we actually booked a cabin for an extra night. So once we got the ute fixed, we could run around town and with the ute and do a bit of a tourist run and make sure we were happy with it. So yeah, and the ute was in warranty, but I knew they weren't going to look at it for, you know, because it's pretty well modified. So I thought, anyway, the tilt truck bloke, he said, oh, he's had a few DPFs fail, and they reckon it could have been because of the tune. He said sometimes you see them get tuned on the coast here at sea level, but when they get up high, the atmospheric pressure changes slightly and it leans the motor out and makes it run hotter. And so, you know, which, I don't know, I don't think mine was leaned out. I think it was overfueling. And anyway, so I went to Toyota and they said, oh, mate, can't look at it for 2.5 weeks. And that's a standard thing. Like, I bought a Toyota because there was Toyota agents everywhere around Australia. And we have friends we follow, and they wanted to get their 200 series Land Cruiser serviced, and they couldn't book in. They're on the road all the time, and they couldn't book in. They said, oh no, 2.5 weeks. And they said, well, we've got to be in such and such a town. So they ring that. Yeah, they said another 2 weeks. And then, so they had to work out what town they thought they'd be in a month in advance and book 3.5 weeks out to get into to a Toyota dealership. And the standard answer from Toyota everywhere is can't look at it for 2.5 weeks. So it doesn't matter what dealership, they can't look at it for 2.5 weeks. So I don't know what's going on there. But anyway, went and had a chat to them, and the service manager says, oh, you've had that tuned, haven't you? And I said, yeah, I have. And he said, mate, $10,000 in 2.5 weeks. And I said, $10,000 for a new DPF. And he said, oh, if someone's tuned the vehicle, he said, Toyota won't use that ECU anymore because they might have a virus on their gear or something like that. So we've got to put a new engine controller in it. And I said, oh, look, mate, you're having a bit of a crack here. And he said, oh, well, that's how it is. He said, 10 grand. And I said, yeah. And wipe your warranty. You know, your warranty's wiped. And I said, well, that's all right. The warranty's only got 8 months left anyway or something. And I said, yeah, all right. We probably won't deal with you. Thanks anyway. And anyway, we had heard from the tilt truck driver. There was a bloke that did hot ups and tunes at Coffs Harbour, which was a couple of hours away. And there was another one at Inverell. And anyway, I found the exhaust centre in town. And I thought, I'll go and have a talk to him. And I went in and said, oh, g'day, mate. And, you know, introduced myself and said, you wouldn't have a 79 series DPF at all that you'd taken off a car or something? And he said, oh, no. And I said, what about a DPF delete? And he said, no. He said, we can get a DPF delete. He said, that's illegal. But he said, we can get one. but he said you can't just bolt it on to get going. You've got to reset the computer and clear the codes and all that. So I went to Repco and I bought a code reader, and I couldn't clear the codes. And later on we found out because the two of the wires had got that hot on the DPF that they'd shorted together, and so there was a constant fault there. And that's why, even though I went and bought the thing to clear it, which I've done in the past with cars, we couldn't do it. So anyway, talking to him, and he hardly chatted for a while, but anyway, I just stayed there chatting. And, anyway, he loosened up and he told me about Fraser, a young bloke, Fraser Witt. And Fraser had the gear to put tunes in them, and he might have had a DPF available. So anyway, I rang Fraser, and Fraser said, "Oh, it's a lucky week, mate." He said, "My wife's having a kid this week sometime, so I've hardly booked any work in. But," he said, "I'm working on a truck this morning." He said, "I've got to finish that truck off, but perhaps in the afternoon there I might be able to come and help you out." And I said, "Oh, great." So he works out of Armidale there at one of the removalist places, and he does their trucks, and he's got like a container with his gear in it because he's from Uralla. And I said, "All right, give us a ring." So anyway, I got a call from him, and he said, "I'll be there in half an hour." So about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we got around there and he started on it. This is the day after that it failed. And he said, "Oh," I told him about the DPF, and he said, "Oh, look, I've sold one to a mate recently." And he said, "I know he hasn't fitted it. I'll see if he's not using that, and we can grab that, then get yours and put it back and, you know, do an exchange thing." And I said, "Oh, shit, that'd be great." So anyway, he rolls in and he says, "Oh, Bundy Bear's shed." And I said, "Yeah." He says, "You do those bloody videos." I said, "Yeah." He says, "Oh, geez, you've got me out the shit." He's with injection pumps, and he says, "I look there if I need to know anything." So yeah, we had a follower, and anyway, look, we hit it off. He's a great family, great young fellow with his young family. And in the vintage machinery circles, when they have the Walcher Vintage Machinery Rally, Walker, it's W-I-L-C-H-A, but it's pronounced Walker apparently. He looks after the tractors, and he's showing me pictures of his tractors. And anyway, he's under there pulling the DPF off, and I've got a photo that I'll probably try and pop in here. The DPF got that hot that it actually blew a hole in the side of it, through the safety shield and everything, and it looked like you'd cut it open with an oxy torch. And I said, "Holy shit," like, we couldn't believe it. He said, "I've changed some of these out because they fail." He said, "I have changed some of these out over my time, but," he said, "I've never been so dirty. All the carbon and shit dropping out of yours." And anyway, apparently the mob that put the clutch in and did my tune up here, Swick, they'd left one of the DPF brackets, they'd left the bolt loose, and then where one of the, I don't know if it's an oxygen sensor, but there's 3 sensors, one of the little clips on that had the retainer clip that holds it in broken off. So it looks like they've got an O-ring pick, and I don't know whether that's something, yeah, it might have come loose or something, we don't know. And anyway, so he bought this exchange DPF, but I had to pay him a bit extra because my DPF was that buggered, he couldn't use it as an exchange, and you know, tidy it up and all that sort of thing. It was just too crook. So he gave me a good second-hand DPF, and he said, "Oh, now things have changed. Yeah, we'll probably have to pop a new tune into it. We can't leave that tune in that you've got because it may well have caused the problem. We don't know." And since I've done a bit of homework, and we're under the opinion that the DPF might have started to do a burn, which they do, and it may not have stopped. It might have just, and to do a burn, they actually put extra fuel in, and your DPF gets white hot. It's like ceramic stuff inside, gets white hot, and it burns any carbon and that off. And it's possible, because it was at the back of the DPF, it's possible that it started to burn, and whether that sensor plug was dicky or something, it just didn't stop, and it just kept pouring that in, and it just got hotter and hotter and hotter, we think. But anyway, we don't know that. I'm going to go and see the blokes that tuned it. I rang them, and I said, "Look, a couple of businesses in town," and Toyota said about getting them tuned at the coast and going up. The tow truck driver said it. The exhaust bloke said he'd heard of that. and Fraser, I said to him about it, and I'm not sure which way he went with that now. But anyway, so he put the new DPF under for me, and he said, now I've got to tune it for you because we can't trust the old tune. And I said, yeah, that's fair enough. And I said, what sort of tune are you going to put in it? And he's got a Land Cruiser ute. Look, I think he's just about 6 months older than mine or something, same basic machine. And he said, look, I've got a tune in mine that I've had in the ute for 130,000 kilometres now. He said, I've got a 2-tonne service trailer on the back with his toolboxes and that in. He said, that's just about never off it. And he said, this thing pulls like a bloody train. He says, goes like shit. And he couldn't quite remember when he was doing the tune on his. He used his as a bit of, like a test thing a bit. You could get a tune from the people he works with him, but then you can adjust shit. So, and he couldn't remember whether he had 230 or 250 horsepower at the wheels. So same size wheels and everything as mine. So I was all right, put that in. So it cost me another tune, which is another $1,300, and to pull the DPF out and supply a new second-hand one that, and because I didn't have an exchange, that was another $900. So about $2,300 later, we were off and racing, and we did a test run with it with Fraser there, and then once we finished, he showed me his tractor photos, and he got married with farm halls. He's got farm halls there, and there's him and the missus in the farm halls, and showing me his tractor. So I'm nearly ready to go home, but he's a nice bloke, and he showed me all his tractor pictures and all that. So yeah, so I made a new friend. So the next day, yeah, we just stayed around Armadale, and we did the lap round through Uralla past the churches and all that, the long lap out, and went and looked at a couple of extra places just to test the car before we took it out of town, because Fraser was going to be in town the next day working for someone else, and I thought, well, if we got trouble, we can sort it out. But look, the bloody thing goes really well. Some of the hills, and the day after that, we started heading to Dorrigo again up those hills, and the hills that we were dropping back 2 gears, and we were back into 3rd gear, and some of them 2nd gear. When it started dropping its bundle, we rarely hopped out of top, and now and then the really steep stuff we dropped back to 4th, but yeah, once it gets back to 2,000 revs, it just hangs on, and it goes like a bloody train. The turbo, I get a bit of a young boy turbo whistle now with it, a bit of brrr, which I try and drive without that, and but look, yeah, Fraser, if you're watching, it goes like stink. I'm really happy with it, and it's just loosened the whole car up a bit, where before it felt restricted. Ever since I've owned it, it sort of felt restricted. It run well and everything, but it just felt restricted. But now it's loose, and you want to push the go pedal a bit harder. Well, I asked about fuel economy. We were towing the camper trailer, and we were doing 100, 110 kilometres an hour where we could, whatever the speed limit said we did, up hills, and then we were doing a lot of snooping around towns, in low gears around towns, and we were averaging 18 litres per 100 kilometres. That's towing. That was an average, out west, bloody everywhere. And look, I don't think it's changed much. I haven't tested it properly yet, but he said, yeah, if you get up, if you speed a bit in it and you keep your foot into it, it will get. I think he said he's got up with towing. He's got up to about 22 when they were up doing a big trip up north. But you got the power, but they averaged a higher, high kilometre an hour speed. So, but anyway, look, I'm happy with it. It's going well. Yeah, it's just good. But after we got all that done and got into Dorrigo and had a look around there, and we kept going. We found these back roads, and we ended up at Grafton, out the back of Grafton, and then it was raining there, and so we didn't want to camp. We wanted a cabin in a caravan park, and so we pulled up there in a little park and got the phones out, got Starlink going, and found a cabin at Brown's Rocks near Aluka, and stayed there a couple of nights. Cheap as shit, like 140 a night, I think it was, right on the river. We could sit on the porch and have a beer and look at the boats, and there was a fishing comp on. We could watch that, but stayed there. Then we went up to Pottsville for a few nights, and then we came home. So look, we had a bloody good holiday. Yeah, enjoyed it all around, even though we had to buy a push bike, get the car fixed, and got to come home and fix a camper. Apart from that, bloody good time. So yeah, we did enjoy it. I could pack up again and go tomorrow, you know. And when you're out there, I was thinking, oh, you know, I better get home and do the mowing. And now I'm home looking at the mowing, I'm thinking, oh shit, there's any chance I can go fishing. But we got the kids. It's school holidays in Queensland at the moment, and Jude and I got the kids for this week. And so yeah, they're taking it to our friend Sal's for a swim for a couple of days this week. And young Arrow, I've told him I'm taking him fishing. He's always pestering me to go fishing. And I thought, well, you got nothing else to do now you're retired, but he put a bit of time into the kids. So that's what's happening. I don't know what's going to happen in the shed here, but we'll get there. But I do have a lot of slashing, but I've got to be careful with the slashing. I'll slash along the road and keep the place tidy, but there's places where I don't want to put a tractor for probably a month yet. And if we get another, we're on our second sunny day now, so if we get another couple of sunny days, I might be able to mow. I mowed the front lawn and I left wheel marks on it. So I'm hoping that dries out and I can do another mow there. So anyway, see how it goes. But look, that's it. Yeah, we're back. I had a good break from YouTube. I sort of needed it. YouTube was becoming a job and I wasn't enjoying it much. So back on track there, I think. There's a couple of things that aren't tractor related I want to do in the shed, and I think I mentioned it before I went away. We're coming into a busy show season for the Vintage Machinery Club, and I want a couple of little engines and a couple of little pumps and things that I can take to shows, unload it, have an easy time, take the camp because it's comfortable for Jude and myself, put an engine and a baler and or a pump or something in the back, have a quick and easy display, and get going. So I've got a couple of engines there, but I haven't got carts under them, so I should put some time into carts and things like that. So I'll take snippets of bits and pieces of what I'm doing there, but mainly this week I think I'll be back on mowing and whippersnipping and tidying the place up because it's a bloody shambles. But anyway, I'll take it for a quick look. There will be a video coming out just with the Brendamere Grand Parade. Now I'm home and I can do some editing. It might pop out through the week too, depending on what time I get. But anyway, that's it. Thanks for dropping by. Yeah, we'll catch you all next week, and have a good one.